Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Today, we're going somewhere pretty intense. A world where, well, the ground beneath your feet could literally turn against you.
Sounds shaky.
Yeah, no kidding. We're diving into N.K. Jemisin's The Fifth Season and The Obelisk Gate.
Jemisin. Brilliant.
Right. These novels, they take us to the stillness.
The stillness. Now, that's a name that doesn't quite fit, is it?
Yeah, it's assumed continent. But the thing is, they've got these apocalyptic events. They call them seasons.
Seasons of, let me guess, not sunshine and flowers.
Nope. More like earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, the whole, end of the world package.
So survival hinges on understanding the Earth's, shall we say, mood swings. And Jemisin does this amazingly. She makes the stillness itself a force, shaping everything.
It's not just a setting, right? It's like it gets into people's heads.
Exactly. How they build, what they stockpile, even their language, it all reflects this awareness that, boom, any minute now.
It's like that term fire mountain for volcano.
Precisely. Or boil for a geyser.
Yeah.
It's constantly there.
And then there are the origins.
Yes. Those who can, how should I put it, negotiate with the earth.
Negotiate's putting it mildly. These are people who can control Earth's energy. I mean, calm tremors, channel heat. They can reshape rock.
Essential for survival in such a world?
You'd think so, right? But there's this fear, too.
Oh, of course. The flip side of the coin, they could also be destroyers. It's this fascinating duality that Jemisin explores.
Hope and fear all rolled into one.
Exactly. Society's relationship with power, it's never straightforward, is it? Do we revere it, fear it?
Especially when it's a power we don't fully grasp. I mean, it's like the unknown, right? It's easier to just slap a label on it, call it dangerous, than try to understand.
And that fear, it shapes how the stillness treats these Arajans.
Okay, so let's talk about the Fulcrum.
Yes, the Fulcrum, an organization that trains Arajans. Their claim, harnessing this power for the good of everyone.
Sounds noble enough.
On the surface, perhaps. But, well, you scratch a little deeper. It's a system of control. They take origin, strip them of their names, their identity, put them into a rigid hierarchy.
They give them new names.
Precisely. And enforce this whole system with guardian, origin. But, well, think of them as enforcers.
So the Fulcrum, they walk this fine line, protecting society or oppressing individuals. What do you think? Is it for the greater good? Or is there something else going on?
It's a complicated question. Their stated goal is to prevent harm, but the method, well, they often lean toward suppression, exploitation.
It's not exactly.
No. And we see the effects of this on characters like Alabaster. He's a 10-ringer, the highest level of ability, immense power, but, well, there's a price, a psychological toll.
Makes you think about the whole idea of control, right? Trying to contain something that powerful.
It's like trying to, hold back a flood with a dam. Eventually.
That's gotta give.
Exactly. And it's a reflection of the stillness itself, this tension between raw power and the struggle to control it. But it's not just origins.
No, the whole society's structured that way. They have these, what are they called?
Use castes, assigned by skills, abilities.
Right, like breeders, strongbacks, innovators. It's all very well prescribed.
Even the children born outside this, bastards, they call them, discriminated against.
It's like this world's trying to impose order on everything, natural and social.
Indeed. Control. Maybe born from the very nature of their world, unpredictable, dangerous. But of course, control always has a cost, often individual freedom.
And then you have these, well, they're hard to describe.
Yeah, obelisks.
Yeah. Giant structures just floating in the sky.
Connected to orogenic power, it seems.
Yeah.
Reacting to powerful origins, moving on their own.
Jemisin describes them so vividly. You can picture them, these ancient, huge things just drifting across the sky.
Their purpose, who created them? That's part of the mystery. What's your take on them? Threat, hope, something else?
They're the unknown. And speaking of unknowns, there's also the rift.
Yes, the massive chasm connected to orogeny, the obelisk.
It's like the world itself is cracking open.
Literally and perhaps metaphorically. Is it a sign of worse to come, or could be a path to something new?
So we have this volatile world, powerful origins, a controlling organization, ancient mysteries. It's a lot to unpack. But before we dive into all that, let's meet some of the people who navigate this crazy world. We've mentioned Essen, Damaya.
Each character, they offer a different perspective on the forces at play. The social structures, orogeny, just trying to survive. Let's start with Essen. When we meet her, it's right after a season has hit.
Hard hit.
She's lost everything, her community and her son.
Yeah, that part. Brutal. And her daughter, Nasun, she's gone, right?
Taken by her husband, actually. But Essen, she's not just searching. She's a powerful origin herself.
So she's dealing with loss, this prejudice she faces, and her own immense power. It's a lot.
But she's strong, resilient. It's almost like watching her, you see this, I don't know, this spark of the human spirit that just won't be extinguished.
Powerful stuff. And Demaya, she's young, right?
Just a girl when she's taken from her family. They discover she's an origin and boom, right into the Fulcrum's training.
Can you imagine a kid ripped away, forced into this system that wants to weaponize her?
It raises questions about trauma, identity. What happens when a society tries to control your very essence?
It's like, they talk about the stillness, but really it's that lack of stillness inside. In Demaya's case, that's the real story.
Yeah, Alabaster, he's a 10-ringer, like I said, top level.
But something about him, he's
unpredictable.
Yeah, like you never know what he'll do next.
He represents the dangerous side of orogeny, unchecked power. But it's not just about him, is it? It's about the conflict, individual freedom versus control.
Which plays out in all these different ways across the stillness.
Exactly. And Alabaster, for all his destructive tendencies, I think he's trying to protect people in his own.
So maybe even the most powerful orogenes, they're still, human.
Driven by emotions, trying to make sense of things. Then we have Cyanite.
She's an orogene too, right?
Yeah. Very skilled. The Fulcrum pairs her with Alabaster on a mission, but she's different. Always questioning, challenging the status quo.
Even within the system that basically wants obedience.
She pushes back against the Fulcrum, against expectations. And her partnership with Alabaster, it's a wild ride.
You get to see the full spectrum of orogeny, good and bad, through their interaction. And Hoa, don't forget Hoa.
Hoa, the mysterious boy who travels with Essen. He looks like a child, but
he's not.
Centuries old, trapped in a garnet obelisk, a unique perspective on time, history.
Creepy, but fascinating. He knows a lot about Essen, about orogeny, and those cryptic hints he dropped.
About Essen's past lives, calling her Demaya, Cyanite, names she doesn't even recognize.
Like he's holding pieces of a puzzle she's forgotten.
He even says this one line, "You asked if I was all right." So casual, but chilling. Almost like he chose her.
He's definitely more than just a, sidekick. He's part of the puzzle, too. So we've got these mysteries, this magic system, these complex characters. But at the heart of it, these books are about, survival.
In the face of, let's be honest, possible annihilation, how do you cope with that?
As an individual, as a society.
It's a very human question. And we see it play out in these impossible choices, character. Loss, trauma, moments of hope when you least expect it.
And there's this tension, too, between individual needs and what the community demands. Can you even survive these seasons alone? Or do you need each other?
It's not a simple answer. There's cooperation, conflict, selfishness, and amazing acts of selflessness. Jemisin doesn't give you easy solutions.
It's more about thinking about the choices we make, the sacrifices.
And what we leave behind.
Because even in this world, human connection, it matters. It can be a source of strength.
Right.
But it can also be a source of, conflict.
Especially when fear and desperation are. And speaking of things that divide, let's talk policy.
Oh, yeah. The stillness has a whole empire thing going on.
Ruled by the Sanized. They're obsessed with this idea of racial purity.
And they control the Fulcrum, which, makes sense, right? The Orogens, they come from all different backgrounds.
It's a classic power dynamic. You see it throughout history. One group claiming superiority, using that to exploit others.
And it's not just brute force.
No, they control knowledge, too. Technology. Remember that scene with Cyanite? She discovers how stone lore, this traditional knowledge of the stillness, has been manipulated.
To fit the Samsized agenda.
Exactly. Shows how even knowledge can be twisted to serve power. Makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What are we taking for granted?
We have to question everything, not just accept what we're told, even from people, sources we think are, reliable. And these power dynamics, they don't just play out on this big scale, right?
Not at all. Think about Essen's husband, Jija. He murders their son, kidnaps their daughter.
Because he thinks Nisun inherited orogenic abilities. Like, how twisted is that?
It's the worst of the stillness. Origins as monsters. It shows how easily fear turns to violence, how prejudice can lead to, unimaginable things.
Can love even survive in a world like that, when hatred's so ingrained?
It's a question that lingers. But there are moments of hope. Essen, Demaya, they find strength in each other.
Connections that defy all these divisions the world's trying to impose. And don't forget the Stone Eaters.
Ah, yes. They represent something different, a community actively breaking free. They embrace orogeny, diversity.
And they're surviving. Their city, Castrima Under, it's this amazing feat of engineering. It stood for, who knows how many seas.
They're almost like a blueprint for a different future. What if we didn't fear these abilities? What if we learned to work with the Earth's power, not against it?
It's a good question for us too, right? I mean, especially now with climate change, everything happening, maybe we can learn something from these Stone Eaters.
About respecting the natural world, finding balance. Now, back to the obelisks. We still don't know their purpose.
They're clearly more than just, old relics. They react to orogens, move on their own.
Huh.
Remember when Alabaster raises that huge stone wall from the sea?
Incredible scene. It almost felt like he was drawing power from that amethyst object.
Right. And then there's that line about the Guardian. Something about them, the things they do being like wrong magic, contaminated.
Suggests there might be different kinds of magic in this world. Some harmonious, some not. Adds to the mystery, doesn't it?
Makes you wonder about the obelisk's role in the seasons themselves. Did they cause the first one? Or were they meant to, like, control them somehow?
We're getting into some deep theories here. But then there's also the way people talk about the stillness, about the Earth. Like, the Earth is the enemy. Father Earth hates us.
It's almost like the planet's a character with its own, agenda.
Not necessarily a benevolent one. It challenges our assumptions, doesn't it? We like to think of nature as this beautiful thing, but what if it's more complex than that?
Capable of both good and bad. Makes you think twice about our place in the world.
We're not in control as much as we like to think. Maybe the Stone Eaters are onto something. Adaptation, not domination.
That's a good takeaway.
Yeah.
And there's something else that stuck with me. That whole idea of orogeny being about focus, control.
Not just brute force.
It's about understanding the forces at play. Remember when Alabaster teaches Cyanite to quell microshakes, tiny tremors most wouldn't even notice? He's pushing her to refine her skill.
To go deeper.
It's like anything, right? Art, music, any skill. Mastery comes from practice, discipline.
And it shows the danger of power without responsibility. Whether it's orogeny, political power, even technology, it can so easily become destructive.
So much to think about. We've covered the world, the people, the themes, the politics. But as we wrap this up, what really stood out for you personally?
It's the characters. The way they just keep going. Hardship, loss, trauma. They don't give up. They fight. They search for connection. They hope.
Like this, this stubborn human spirit that refuses to be crushed. And it makes you think, even in a world like that, there's always something worth fighting for.
That's the core of Jemisin's work, I think. Hope, resilience, that we can overcome, that we can build a better world, even when everything's against us. It really is inspiring. And, there's another layer to this whole thing. We talked about the seasons, but did you catch that they weren't always a thing?
You mean like they haven't always been this regular occurrence?
Right. Like, take the season of teeth. That happened way back, like over 900 years before the events in the book.
A supervolcanic explosion.
Yeah. So much time had passed that people started thinking it was just a legend. They lost that, that knowledge of what their world had actually gone through.
Makes you think, right? How quickly we can forget things, how fragile civilizations can be.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, right? Is there a connection? The obelisks, the stone eaters, the origins of the seasons themselves.
Like, did the obelisks cause the first season?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they were built to, try to control them.
It's a possibility. And then there's the way people talk about the Earth itself. The Earth is the enemy. Father Earth hates us.
Chilling stuff. Like, it's not just a planet. It's this, this being with a grudge.
Challenges our whole perspective, doesn't it? We see nature as beautiful. Something to protect, but what if it's more complex?
Capable of both, nurturing A&D, destroying.
Makes you question whether all our efforts to control nature are, pointless.
Maybe the Stone Eaters have it right. Adapting, not trying to dominate. Good lesson for us too,
Especially now, climate change, all that. We could learn a thing or two from how they live. And speaking of learning, there's that whole thing about how orogeny works. It's not just about raw power, is it?
Yeah, it's more about focus, control.
Remember that scene where Alabaster's teaching Cyanite, quelling microshakes?
Those tiny tremors, yeah.
He wants her to understand the subtle stuff. Go beyond just brute force.
It's like any skill, really. To master it, you need precision, discipline.
And it shows the danger of power without that control, whether it's orogeny, political power, anything.
It can turn bad fast. So we've covered so much. The world, the characters, the big ideas. But as we wrap up this deep dive, what really hit home for you?
It's the resilience. The way these characters, they just keep going, even when it seems like there's nothing left.
Makes you think about the strength of the human spirit, that ability to endure, to find meaning, even in the darkest times.
It's a powerful reminder that hope that we can overcome, that we can build something better.
Beautifully said. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. So to everyone listening, we leave you with this thought. What would you do if the world turned against you? How far would you go to protect the people you love? And what kind of world would you build from the ruin? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.